The Beach Boys harmonized their intent to have good vibrations as their music filled the inside of Owen's Jeep. His finger rested casually on the radio dial and his palm on the gear shifter. It had been an unpleasant night. Tears stained his cheeks. The size matched the size of the raindrops that hammered his window. But that was Owen. Everything he did was big. Big tears, big gestures, big muscles. If he had a motto, that would be it. He loved hard and fell harder. The lights from his Jeep reflected off the rain-drenched pavement. The yellow lines seemed to jump at him as he passed over each. He always drove down the center of the road, aka playing Pac-Man, when it was dark like this. There were limited streetlights around the park, parts of a national movement to limit light pollution in federally funded areas. Owen was all for whatever kept the park from becoming the Vegas version of a park. He didn't want brand-name stores in the town. He didn't want trailers the size of houses filling up the campground. He just wanted nature to be enjoyed in the way that it was intended to be, which is to say with a cup of coffee, a tent, and a beautiful woman next to him. The backpack on the seat next to Owen trembled at the rumble of the Jeep. Owen glanced over to it and placed his hand on it. He could still feel the little box under the fabric. Another fresh round of tears broke free from his eyes. He wiped at them as he passed a road sign that stated, "Brightness Falls." The town site for the park was only 10 kilometers away. He loved the town. It was the only one you could ever see himself living in. The quintessential mountain town. He had been lucky enough to get a job in the park as a ranger when they had opened the park back up, after that whole incident with the writer. And every day since he had been living his best life. They were paying him to hike, swim, yell at idiots, and take care of this magical place. If he could have sex with the park, he would have, which to be fair felt like he was on his way to do. Every morning he would get up, make coffee, drive to another part of the park to enjoy the sunrise. And then he would break out his phone and record another episode of his podcast, Good Vibrations, pairing morning sunrises with Beach Boy songs. The gist of the show was that he would describe where he was, the sunrise, his coffee, and finally what Beach Boys song went best with it all. It was wildly unpopular, but he did it for himself. And if the world wasn't as sophisticated as himself, then they could sail on. Carolyn was supposed to join him today. It was episode 100. She was going to be his first official guest on the show. But that wasn't going to happen now. Not after last night. Their fight had been such a huge blowout that he ended up staying out at the ranger outpost overnight. The mosquitoes were very thankful for it. Owen's back wasn't. The cots at the outpost were garbage and not built for a man of his size. They never tell you that once you start exercising your shoulders, they're going to be too big for just about everything. The number of door frames that he bumped into now was embarrassing. But despite the constant battle with door frames, and all the other narrow-built stuff in the world, it was well worth it. He had been born skinny, and he had been that for most of his life. It drove him crazy, mainly the whole never being able to talk about it without fears of people not understanding. You're allowed to say that you need to lose weight in society, but you can't say that you need to gain some. The rain increased its onslaught on the vehicle's window. Droplets the size of Owen's nipples hammered the glass. He clicked the wipers on. The two long blades cut through the rain with lethal water force, leaving a clear view to see for only a second before they completed their journey back to where they had started. The Beach Boys harmonized their intent to have good vibrations as the music filled the inside of Owen's Jeep. His finger rested casually on the radio dial, and his palm on the gear shifter. Owen shook his head. Were they playing the same song twice in a row? That was odd. But what do you expect from an all Beach Boys satellite radio channel? Another fresh round of tears broke free from Owen's eyes. He wiped at them as he passed a road sign that stated, Brightness Falls, the town site for the park, was only still 10 kilometers away. What? Owen muttered to himself. The local kids must have been farting around with the park signs again. They'd done it as well for the town's annual festival, Brightfest, when it had been on. They had changed the sign from Brightfest to Girthfest. Most people had laughed it off, though a few as always were upset that the B was missing. They didn't think their money should have to pay to buy a new letter. Owen had been in the prior group. He had been the first to post it on his podcast social media pages. He had gotten a lot of likes. Who knew people like Girth? He had suspected it for years, but he had never received that larger of a confirmation. Still, messing with a festival sign was one thing. Changing a distance marker that was outside the town site, well, that was a federal fine. He'd have to scare them straight with his best ranger voice. Owen grabbed his walkie from his backpack, double-checked the power and channel, and then squeezed the talk button. "Hey, Beck, you up yet?" Nothing but a static buzz greeted him. "Beck." Again, nothing but static. That was odd. She was always up before him. It was her job to make sure that all the animals being tracked by the park rangers were nowhere near the town or popular visiting locations within the park. It had never ended well when a bear or moose got too close to a group of tourists. The tourists seemed to lose their common sense when it came to dangerous animals. The bear, on the other hand, just wanted to eat, and a stupid tourist was a delicious snack. So, Beck made sure to keep the two groups apart. She liked to get up early to do so. "Beck, you there?" Owen said as he tried one last time. A strange static echoed through the walkie. Owen turned the radio volume up and he held the walkie up to his ear. The sound reminded him of what the dial-up internet at his parents' house used to sound like. Lots of strange clicks and squelches. The Beach Boys harmonized their intent to have good vibrations as their music filled the inside of Owen's Jeep. His finger rested casually on the radio dial and his palm on the gear shifter. The walkie was gone. Owen shook his head. What the heck? Another round of tears on Owen's face. He stared at the Brightness Falls sign as it passed by, still only 10 kilometers away. Owen slammed on the brakes and glanced behind him at the sign. One sign change was one thing, but there weren't that many signs between the ranger station and the town. The kids would have had to add signs to change, but he wasn't sure that they had that kind of dedication to a prank. But what was with the music? Why did the radio keep going back to the same song? Plus, it wasn't even on a few seconds ago. And then, there was the walkie that seemed to have vanished from his hand. Owen patted his backpack. He could feel the radio along with the little box inside. How it had gone from his hand to his backpack. Owen reached into the bag for his cell phone as he turned back around. The Beach Boys harmonized and filled the inside of Owen's Jeep. His finger rested on the radio dial, and his palm on the gear shifter. Tears ran down Owen's face, and he was moving again, despite having just stopped to look at the back of the sign. The very sign that just passed him by again, stating the town was only 10 kilometers away. What in the world? Owen muttered as he smashed the radio power button with his fist and drove his foot down hard on the brake. The Beach Boys harmonized. Owen's finger rested on the radio dial and his palm on the gear shifter. Tears on his face, the 10-kilometer away sign passed by again, as if it was giving him the finger. Well, this was just great. Was he in some kind of Groundhog's Day loop thing? At least that's what it seemed like. But why had he sometimes restarted it quicker than others? Apparently turning the radio off was a big no-no. Rain pelted the window. Instinctively, Owen turned the wipers on. The Beach Boys harmonized. Owen's finger rested on the radio dial and his palm on the shifter. Tears on his face. There was that 10-kilometer sign again. Okay, so no wipers. This time when the rain got harder, he left the wipers off, despite how hard it was to see. He squinted to look through the massive drops. Okay, so far so good. He glanced in the rearview mirror. The sign was fading into the background. Owen laughed. "Take that, you stupid Groundhog Time looping sign." He flicked the sign the middle finger and laughed again. The Beach Boys harmonized. Owen's finger rested on the radio dial and his palm on the shifter. Tears on his face. And there was that stupid Groundhog Time looping sign. Again, he left the wipers off when the rain started, and watched the sign fade into the distance behind him. Now what? What had been done to cause the loop to restart last time? Giving the sign the finger. Who knew signs could be so sensitive? So, what should he do? He really hated all this paranormal stuff, but Beck, she loved this garbage. He grabbed the walkie and remembered he had just tried calling her and got nothing but those weird sounds. So she wasn't going to be much help. This all felt way out of his comfort zone. He liked the Beach Boys, and lifting heavy things and then putting them down. Neither seemed applicable to whatever was happening to him. A thunderous crack echoed through the Jeep cab over the sound of the rain pelting the roof. Owen tried to see between raindrops what it was. It wasn't a sound that was local to the park. He had never heard it before. It sounded like something massive snapping in two. Crap. Owen whispered as he watched a commercial airplane plummet into the ground. It streaked across the front window of his Jeep. The plane's engines blazed red, obviously on fire, definitely not normal. He couldn't even remember the last time he saw a plane fly over the park. He was pretty sure that it was a no-fly zone anyway, since the whole Brightness Falls incident. He watched as the airplane pulverized itself into the side of a mountain, not far away from the town. A trail of fire followed it up. The forest around the crash site smoked. God, even with rain like this, a fire that size was going to spread easily through the forest. It had been years since they had had the money to remove all the underbrush and kindling. The government had felt that forest firefighting wasn't worth the investment. As Owen watched the fire spread down the mountain, his anger grew, and he really wished that he could do something about this and the government would actually help them out. There was a blur through the raindrops as something ran from the tree line to the road. Distracted by the plane crash and fire, Owen reacted slowly as a moose met the front of Owen's Jeep. Its height sent the poor animal careening over the top of the vehicle. Blood from the unfortunate creature mixed with the rainwater. Owen badly wanted to turn the wipers on, but the Beach Boys harmonized. Owen's finger rested on the radio dial and his palm on the shifter. Tears on his face. The moose's blood was gone, but the sign was back. He grabbed his radio. He had to let someone know about the plane crash that was about to happen. Maybe he could stop it. He pressed the walkie button and was greeted by the strange noise. "Sweet surfing safari," Owen yelled as he rolled his window down, though before he could throw the walkie out. The Beach Boys harmonized. His finger rested on the radio dial, palm on the shifter, and there was the sign. He wanted to punch every inch of the inside of his Jeep, and then get out and punch everything on the outside too. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He wondered what Carolyn was doing. He wasn't sure that how many loops he had been through so far, but it felt like forever since he had seen her. And while he was still upset about the night before, he still loved her. Crisis and time loops tended to remind you of the important things in life. Owen opened his eyes as the sign passed by again. So did the moose. What was he supposed to do about the moose hitting the Jeep? Was he supposed to do something or not do something? He ignored the rain as he thought about it. He was actually getting used to driving through the big drops. After passing by the sign at least 30 more times, he had lost count after the first 23. His frustration was reaching Hulk levels. If he could shred his pants and grow 20 size larger, he'd gladly do so. At least that would be a cathartic release. This was, well, it was hell. His own personal Owen hell. No Carolyn, a forest fire, plane crash, a murdered moose, a broken radio, a missing podcast opportunity. The recurring song was killing his love of one of his favorite Beach Boy songs. And the worst of all, He felt like a complete idiot for not being able to figure any of this out. He was wondering if maybe his mom had been humoring him the entire time about being special. He was pretty sure a brick sitting here in the gas pedal could do a better job than he could. He tried opening the window to various heights, slowing down, shifting gears, turning the AC on and off, and a few dozen more that he couldn't even remember now. The worst part of it was that even if he got past the moose, then what? He would have to figure out another thing. He would have to start this whole process over. The more that he thought about it, the more shocked he was that he had made it this far. Frustrated and taking a page from the brick's book, Owen hammered on the gas. What if he just crashed the car, drove his Jeep right into a tree? Would that do anything? The Jeep passed 88 miles per hour. Maybe he could. The moose bounded over the road in the Jeep's rearview mirror. Owen threw his hands in the air. Yeah, take that, you stupid inanimate object. Owen yelled at the sign as it vanished from his rearview mirror. He had done it. He had gotten past the moose and out of the loop. Except the Beach Boys harmonized. Owen's finger rested on the radio dial and his palm on the shifter. Tears on his face, the sign, like a giant middle finger, passed by the Jeep.